excited to introduce Artur Olesch, a digital health journalist.
Everybody is a media outlet, so everybody can be a great media. Just visible online, offline, it means that also you can be found. If you write a great story, a great post, you have invested 1 hour, it can happen that nobody will read it.
What we are looking for nowadays, for a good storytelling or for creation a good product.
I think a story always starts with describing a situation. Then you have your reader, and your reader will follow. That's the trick. Really show the people what is happening around, not only what is happening in your head.
Welcome to Startup Sluts, where we keep it real. No sugar-coated stories, just the raw deal.
Hello and welcome to podcast Startup Sluts, How to Fuck Up Your Podcast. My name is Ksenia and here is my co-host Mary. And today we are diving into the importance of building a strong media presence episode. We've come personally, based on our experience, to realize that perhaps even a little bit too late, that we didn't actively focus on developing relationship with the media early on. As a result, we feel like we may have missed some valuable opportunities, even though we were featured by some very big and well-known German media outlets. But it was the reason which has encouraged us to help our viewers and listeners to avoid making the same mistake and take control on their media strategy from the very beginning.
Yeah, and that is why we are very excited to introduce Artur Olesch, a digital health journalist, founder and editor-in-chief of aboutdigitalhealth.com, and a mentor for medtech startups. Artur, we are very happy to have you here on our podcast and for you to share your expertise with our listeners and with us.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be on your podcast and thank you for having me.
I wanted to start with a brief introduction from introduction question. So you wear actually many hats. So you are a journalist, you are an editor, you are a mentor. Could you briefly tell us how your journey into digital health and working with startups began?
Well, it was quite a long journey. Right after the university, I started to work for an IT company that was developing IT systems for hospitals. So then I came in contact with digital health and I found it quite exciting. Where at this time I was working in marketing department, so it was quite different. And then I realized that I like to write and I can also write. So after a few years, I decided to switch from the marketing department to journalism. I started as a journalist to write about public health, which at that time also were kind of very static topic. And I found, well, maybe digital health, it's so dynamic, it's so new, it's so fresh. And that was my journey. And after a couple of years writing digital health stories, cooperating with startups, cooperating also with companies on their business strategies, digital health business strategies. I'm here in Berlin and I'm happy to be on your podcast. That's my journey. That's at the end.
Happy to have you on our podcast, and I agree actually that doing this journalist part, especially about digital health, to be honest, I think it's very difficult because it's not like you're writing about personal life or the fashion, I don't know, something like that, but you need to be really very conscious what you're writing and about whom you're writing. So it's also very interesting to ask you about media presence and importance being present in media for startups, especially if we are talking about early stage startups. Because based on our experience, like at the very beginning, we did have only an MVP, we did have some customers, we didn't have any investments. And we were like, actually, we are not very interested for media. That is why it was the main reason we haven't connected with them or tried to connect with them. And I think that many early age startups founders have the same opinion. So the question is it really important for startups on very early stages to start at the very beginning to try to connect with media and to be covered by media, or it is better to do maybe on the later stages?
Well, at a very early stage, of course, you won't be featured on big media. No matter how great your idea is, probably you won't make it to be on the cover of big magazines and to be featured in Sifted and media like that. It's simply not impossible, but it's very hard, and you would have to invest a lot of time, maybe to be featured with a very short story with your idea. So it's impossible, but still it's doable. Yeah. So, for example, of course, you can pay for a story. All the big media offer some kind of media packages, advertisement packages, so we can buy a story, but it doesn't make any sense because for early stage startups, what is most important from my perspective is to become media. Not to wait for media to take your story and to publish it, but to become great media and to communicate with all the stakeholders out there. And even at the very early stage, I like to be on LinkedIn, for example, because there you can make a great networking. So it means that at the early stage of development, you can make networking with stakeholders like with investors, like with maybe hospitals who are looking for solutions that you are developing, or over clinicians, over startups, over companies in this area. So, today, what is different, how was it 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, is that everybody is a media outlet. So everybody can be a great media, can create great stories, and we don't have to wait until big titles, big media will take this story and profit from printing it out or from publishing it. But if you are present online, if you start even with an interesting blog, writing about what are you doing, what is your idea, what are you meeting, where are you, what's your story. So it's already a good start to be prepared for the later stages of development where you probably will have to cooperate with media, and sometimes you will get also offers from media to be features. So it means that every development stage has different approach to media presence. Early stage, you are the media, you are producing content, you are communicating with the stakeholders. At the later stage, probably media will contact you to have your story featured. So that is how it's working.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because then I can say that our case is pretty unique in the sense that from very early on, we were approached by big medias in Germany, including like Tagesspiegel, Spiegel Wissenschaft. We've been on the podcast of Axel Springer. So for us, it was like that the logical structure of like they are approaching you and they are finding you somehow, but then it comes to the real world where you are also telling us that you need to proactively approach media and start with a smaller and then build on that to the bigger. But yeah, but as you said, both can happen. We are a good representation of the first one. We got it in that sense lucky, or they found us. But like, what is then the approach you said, okay, building your own brand and basing it on that, like blog posts, it's a very it's a lot of investment of a time of a startup founder, especially when it's like in the beginning. And for my perspective, blog posts need really good investment because you want to deliver quality. It's not only about posting all the time. Then it is like not bringing that much traction to you. So what is the like this time? How do I split this time? What is the most important to, even if you take into consideration that I'm also building my business?
Maybe first I would comment on what you said before. You were lucky. I don't think so. It's a matter of luck. I think it's a matter of proper communication strategy, because if you are present in the market, if you are visible, if you are attending conferences, presentations, if you are just visible online, offline, it means that also you can be found. I mean that, there are hundreds, thousands of startups that are knocking to the door of media. Personally, I receive every day something like 50 messages from startups on LinkedIn, and something like 10 emails, and also messages on X. So it means that usually I just don't read them, even if I try to, just screen through and just see if there is something interesting. But for journalists, I'm a freelance journalist, but for journalists from big media outlets, they just don't read it. So that's the reality. But if you are at the event and you are seen, then probably you will be also contacted if your story is interesting. So if your idea, if your product, if your solution is interesting, it's also interesting story for media, and it works like this. Yeah? Media are looking for great stories that are inspiring, because with these inspiring stories, they're also selling their products. It means their advertisement. So the question about being present online, doesn't matter if it's a blog, if it's a LinkedIn, if it's Twitter. I always suggest to create or just to think about a broader communication strategy, so you have in mind what you would like to achieve and what you will be doing. Small, tiny things. It doesn't have to be a strategy, 10 pages strategy, communication strategy, where you write very specifically what you will be writing about, what is your communication about. But just to think about it, okay, I will post once a week on LinkedIn, I will write a blog every 2 weeks, I will contact a person that is important for me once a day, something like this, very simple steps. When it comes to writing posts on LinkedIn, yeah, it is time consuming. That's true, but it's better to invest half an hour for a good LinkedIn post than just to write something that doesn't make sense or nobody would read it. Yeah, of course, it's not that if you write a great story, a great post, you have invested 1 hour, it can happen that nobody will read it because you are still dependent on the LinkedIn algorithms. So it means that if they will show your post to the audience or not. So you have to be also a little bit lucky. But if you write exciting stories and people start to comment, people start to like, then also the algorithm will see it and you will be featured on the top of the wall of the information wall. You have to also use different techniques. It's not only about writing, because we are living in a time when everybody is writing a lot. There's information overflow. You can't read everything, and even on LinkedIn, which is more professional than other social media like Instagram or like Facebook, people read more, but still the attention span is very short. So it means if it's not interesting from the first few words, from the first sentences, it won't be read. You have to, use techniques like maybe cartoons, maybe infographics, maybe short videos, maybe something funny, maybe some data. So it must be a mix. It can be just the same all the time because people will also get bored or they will just, they won't see your post among all these hundred posts that they're viewing every day. So yeah, it is time consuming, but I've been doing a lot of stuff on LinkedIn, and I see that for me as a freelancer, it's also for me a business case. It pays off. It means that also I can find my customers on LinkedIn, and customers can find me on LinkedIn. So yeah, I think there are a lot of benefits from being present online, but still you need to invest time, same like you invest time in developing your product or solution. It's a part of the story.
Yeah, actually, it's made me, to be honest, a bit sad because I also have understood that even writing some text or information on LinkedIn, which we consider as a social media for professionals, you need like create this engagement to engage people to read it and so on and so on. And you have mentioned also about the story should be interesting for people. It seems like what do you think about this? Maybe writing a good story nowadays is more important than having a cool product which really helps people, you know? This like a bit philosophical question, what we are looking for nowadays for a good storytelling or for creation a good product.
Every product is a story. So every product starts with a story. It comes from somewhere. It doesn't come from nowhere. So just think shortly about this. How did you come to this idea of a product or a solution? And it's already a story. Of course, not everybody has this ability to create a story around an idea or around product. You have to learn this. But it's true that what is inspiring today are stories, people, that's why I also suggest that, for example, for startups, it's better to show yourself as a CEO at the beginning, at the early stages, than to promote your brand. Your brand, it's you also, it's connected. You can divide it anyway. But if you are a person who inspires, person with a story, person who is motivated, with great ideas, you will start also inspire people, maybe also investors, what's the most important, and your future customers. And you have to remember, what is driving people basically when you write stories. People are interested in stories that have two factors. The first one is something that is connected with fear. And the second one is the fascination. Of course, it's not a good idea to use this factor of fear to be seen online. But if you use this factor of fascination, something new, discovery, then people will just stop and will read your story. It can't be anymore just a product description. It doesn't work like this, or just a description. I'm here, I'm doing that. I visited this meeting or this conference or whatever. But it has to be something new. It has to be something exciting. Yeah, of course, it's still has to be true, what is really happening. You can't fake it till you make it, even in the media, but still it has to be very authentic. Yeah, it has to be you. So yeah, I guess that the best idea is just to write, just to read one book about storytelling, and it helps a lot to just to feel how to create story and how to structure a good story, because every time you watch a Netflix series, you see there is a story. Maybe you don't know how it's created and structured, but still it's engaging. At the beginning, the middle, and the end, it has very hard structure, and that's why it's exciting, because people are creating it, they know how to do it.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point of view in that. And I was thinking, because you've mentioned that, for example, you use LinkedIn. Not only people approach you on LinkedIn to ask you to feature them, but you also kind of find that something that is interesting for you. And when it comes to this storytelling, like what catches your attention, in a sense that, is it something that is personal, like the first glance, is it something that resonates with you personally, or is it something that overall sounds interesting, something more innovative? Because it's very subjective thing what is eye-catching for people, and for whom, like what is the goal, who do you want to catch the attention from?
Well, every time it's different. Recently, I found a great story on LinkedIn, a doctor from Argentina who has developed a video game for patients, for children in a hospital. And I found it such a nice story, such a great story. A doctor who is not an engineer, but he wanted to help patients, small patients who are entering the hospital, and they are, of course, afraid of the medical procedures. And it's such a great story, because it's not about the product, the video game, but it's about how to minimize the fear of small patients who are entering the hospital, or before the surgery, before the procedure. And also, it was a story about their parents that were very worried because their children were very stressed before the procedure. So, it's also to see the behind the stages, yeah, what is happening behind the product. Maybe sometimes you can't see it, but you can describe it in a good story. So what catches my attention is something really fresh. It's something that is sometimes future oriented, but sometimes it has a lot to do with people, with humans, with basic emotions, with our hopes, and with our sometimes fears, with what makes us human. Nowadays you can create a great story using ChatGPT, or using AI, and you can really do it just within 15 seconds. Yeah? And ChatGPT is not bad in creating stories. But the point is, uh, just to start with something not generic and general. So writing a story always starts with describing a situation. Yeah? If you write a story about, let's say it's a product for doctors, an app that helps in decision making, clinical support system. So, starting with describing the product, what the product does, it's not a great idea, because we have read it already hundreds of times. But the better idea is to describe a use case, but not just, okay, here is Dr. Peter X, he is doing da-da-da, and the day is like this. But, starting very concrete, like it was Monday in one of the September days. Dr. X was just struggling with a problem of. So you start very concrete, it's very granular from the beginning. And then slowly, if you just catch the intention from a reader, because the story is so exciting, you describe with detail what is happening. The story is juicy, we say, yeah. So you can hear things, you can feel things, you can maybe smell some things, and maybe you can put yourself in this situation, and you think, wow, I'm just like in a story in a book. I can follow the main character, and if you catch attention like this, then you have your reader, and your reader will follow you. That's the trick.
But that's an additional talent to have. To then you write books, maybe if that's what you can make out of a LinkedIn post, that people feel it completely. Then
yeah, use senses. That's the point. That some people just writing, they're just writing, but they don't use the power of senses to show where you are right now. You are at the conference, and you came from your house. It was raining, and it was a beautiful autumn day. So use the senses. So really show the people what is happening around, not only what is happening in your head, because it's simple, but what is happening around.
Yeah, but it sounds like if you don't have in your team a storyteller, really person who is excited to write stories and can do it well, you have some problems.
Well, yeah. As I said, it's it takes only 2 days to read a good book about storytelling, and you know more or less how to create a story. At the beginning, it will take time to write even a post that is interesting, but with time, you will get used to it, and you will know techniques. And some people like to write, some people just don't like to write. So yeah, that's the point. Not everybody is a writer. If a CEO is not a writer, I would suggest the CEO of the yeah, it should be a writer anyway. A CEO, because CEO is this person. CEO of the startup is a person who should drive stories that are driving also the development of a company. That's the true, and we see it on LinkedIn. There are startups and also big companies. They have leaders, and these leaders can write, or they have people who write for them. And that's the point. If you read a story on a Microsoft fan page, it's not so exciting as a story written by Peter Lee about medical algorithms made by Microsoft.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Okay, let's imagine that we are a young startup. We have our CEO who creates the stories. We are doing our homework, and we have either blog posts or like very conscious LinkedIn posts, maybe once a week or twice a week. Then we're like, okay, we have like our MVP, first users, still no investments. But we're okay, we have this like the minimum what we need to create. We have made the decision, it's time to connect with journalists. We have also did our homework. We Google them, who we are interested especially in. What are the next steps we need to do? We exist already online. We are there.
yeah, because you mentioned you receive so many messages which you don't even read. So how do I break through the wall as a contacting a journalist?
Yeah, you have to divide your list of journalists into a few categories. The first category would be local journalists. Maybe it's not always what you are looking for, but it can be a good entry for you to just start. Yeah, because just that that at the beginning it's very hard to be featured on big media. For example, let's say Shifted. Shifted they also get the external stories, but they have their writers, their journalists. So it means that you can submit your story, but it will be, you can imagine that you will be one of hundreds of stories that are submitted every day. Maybe you will have a good luck. Who knows? Because these stories are read anyway. Big tech media, they also are looking for great stories. And the best story is also, is first of all, a new investment, funding, something like this. Or a big cooperation with another tech company, cooperation with a big healthcare system. That's a good story. So you have quite a big chance that you will be accepted with your story. But before sending a story to a journalist, you need to have a good story already in mind, and you need something like 2-3 paragraphs to show what you would like to describe, and also to show your style. Social media, and it's worth Googling. Social media, they have guidance for the writers, external writers and submissions. So just take a few minutes to read it through, to know what they're expecting. And sometimes maybe you won't have to invest 3 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours to write a story, because you will see, okay, we can make it anyway, because it's very demanding. So coming back to how to start, I always suggest to start with journalists from local newspapers, because they are sometimes looking for great stories, and they are also looking for great stories from the neighborhood. So if you are a startup based in town X, maybe there will be somebody interested in your story, and you are featured. The most important is to be visible. It doesn't matter at the beginning where, because you are, with every story printed, published, posted, you are working on your SEO, search engine optimization. So it means that with time, you will be found easier on Google, and with time, in the future, not so far future, also AI systems like Gemini, or systems like ChatGPT, they will also be able to list you among, for example, startups that are active in this and this area, or developing this and that product. So every story published online, and also story published on your blog. I always say that it makes sense to have a blog, even if you are disappointed at the beginning, because maybe you have 5 readers a day, 10 readers a day, and you think, oh no, it doesn't make any sense. I invest so much time in writing, but nobody reads that. It doesn't matter at the beginning, because you are working on your SEO, so you are working on your future visibility. So it's not about what now, but it's about what next. Um, what I was talking about? What was the question?
By step,
Yeah,
how to connect with a journalist and
Journalist,
get the journalist attention.
yeah.
journalist, yeah. And then you will also learn what the journalists are expecting, and how to work with journalists, and slowly, you need somebody. At the end of the day, if you are growing, you need somebody for media relations. I also see among startups and young startups a big mistake that they used to make. It's not even having a simple press kit on the website. Sometimes I would like to write a story about startup, because it's Friday and I still have to give my editor an article. I don't have ideas, and I see this startup would be a great story, and then I Google, I can contact you because it's Friday afternoon. But wow, there is a great press kit on a website with great pictures of the team, pictures of the product, great descriptions. So I can already take everything from there and start describing or writing my article. So, press kit is such a basic thing and still a little bit neglected by startups, not only at the early stages. So, yeah, and then of course, create a list of journalists that you would like to cooperate in the future from big media and ask them. Even, a short sentence, don't pitch to journalists. I always say don't pitch to journalists because then you are burned after a few pitches. You won't get any answer. Maybe you will, maybe you're lucky still. But it's better to write, are you looking for a story right now about a product or a solution for, but we won't of course describe our product, but we would like to highlight the problem that is behind the product, and maybe that would be interesting. If you start like that, you have already a bigger chance that you will get an answer with a small comment, no, for example, or yes, I'm interested in this and that. Could you write, for example, a small piece that I can read it, and then slowly, we can talk on what would be the end story. So just, make contacts with journalists. Do not pitch. Ask them what they're expecting, what they are waiting for, what they need, and this is the way to start a good relationship with journalists. And still, of course, if you are writing a story, a general story, you still expect that your product or solution would be there mentioned. Yeah, you are not a freelance journalist that will invest 2 days for writing a great story for a journalist that will publish it under his or her name. So it's not the game. But the point is that of course you can negotiate and you can say, yeah, this is the story, but can we please mention once our product or the name of the product, or can we please be featured as co-authors? It's already added value. So don't expect that somebody will publish information about the product. Media are earning money on selling such things, not on just publishing pro bono. It's not like this. Sorry.
Coming back to once again to these personal stories to catch the people with something more than only with facts, to be honest.
Yeah, that's that. The first you have to build your personal brand and then move into based on your personal brand and delivering your company to then different stakeholders, which is yeah. I mean, it's a hard work as from our experience, but I think it pays off.
It's a hard work. It's a hard work, of course. Sometimes you can also try to look for a media that are looking for authors, external authors. There are features, for example, on Forbes or bigger media. You can become an author, and you can also publish under the name of your company. So it's not a problem. But just look for new opportunities and be prepared that it will take time, and also it will take a lot of effort to be featured on media.
Yeah, that's very interesting to keep in mind for every founder. I think it's not only about the young and upcoming founders, but for everyone to have this understanding.
But there will be one day, there will be a point where, of course, you will be known and the media will come to you instead you coming to media. Sometimes it takes a few years. Sometimes, if you are, very successful, can take only a few months. But there will be this point where you will be searched and you will be found.
Yeah, as you know, our podcast is also about fuck ups and the mistakes that are done, and you've mentioned few already. And I think for us, one of the biggest one was press kit, because we heard it first time on your workshop, and it was kind of a revelation of what press kit is, and you highlighted the importance and the content of it, and there were some other mistakes you also mentioned, but it's still for me very interesting to have, like, in your experience now working as a freelancer with startups, like the three main mistakes that are done by founders when approaching media and approaching the journalists.
Mm. Yeah, the first one I've already mentioned is pitching to journalists. For me, it's no go. And for me, even if there is a good story, I just delete it because I think that, it's not fair from my perspective from startups just to send the story to hundreds of journalists and waiting for being published. It's also for me, sometimes I really read these stories. So it's also for me to get through these hundreds of messages and to decide if one of the stories is good or not. So please do not pitch to journalists, because usually it doesn't make sense and it can destroy very quickly the potential relationship with a journalist. So that would be the first one. The second one is writing about your company all the time, about company, about a product. It's very hard nowadays to find a product or company that is so unusual, the solution that is so original, that nobody has made it before. And it's the only one thing in the world that has happened right now. So it's almost impossible. It means that, you can share a story about yourself, how did you get to this idea to become a startup, or why is it important for you? But do not describe the product from the beginning, the specifications, also some kind of, I have a feeling, some kind of, fake stories about customers who are already happy using the solution. Um, you know, the problem is that in healthcare, not everything is working very well, about this. And, new solutions, new ideas are really needed. But over promising, what is still one of the sins of startup, is also a bad thing. Over promising that, and being very generic, very general, like telling our product will improve the quality of care. Our product will make doctors' work easier. It's too general. I have seen it, I have heard it so many times. Be very specific what your product is doing. Maybe it will improve access to information and will make doctors' work easier by reducing the time of searching information online by 2%. It's already better than over promising. So the first one was pitching, the second one was over promising, the lack of press kit you already mentioned. So one more would be style of writing. Of course, today it's easier, even if you have a story, just to ask GPT to edit it and to proof it, because it's the easiest thing you can do, and to get rid of all the mistakes, and maybe even to improve a little bit style. Do not, because I also get more and more stories written by GPT, and I can spot them still, and I know if it's written by a human or not. So don't write stories using AI. Of course, it's not forbidden to use AI to create a story, and maybe the story structure. It's still okay, if the journalists are doing that, creating a structure, but then you have to write it by yourself to give some kind of personal touch. To GPT or Gemini will write a story, but it won't be a story with small details about yourself, about your product, about your solution, about your environment, about your problems, challenges. So yeah, please be very personal in the story. Also, I have heard also many times from startups that they're afraid of being too personal and they want to stay professional. It's opposite. It's really opposite because most of the startups are too professional and too less personal, and that's the biggest mistake. Personal stories sell more than specifications, product and solution specifications.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have a question. Let's imagine that startup got some negative press review or criticism. Like, what should startup do then in this case? This crisis management, how it should look like? Should they the same day writing also in their social media any opposite article or post or anything like this, or it's better like sit down and stay quiet.
Ignore it. I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, there are two kind of reactions that you should prepare. The first reaction is that it's not true. Yeah, it's a criticism, but it's not true. So you have to fight with that. Yeah? No matter how. Maybe you will need a lawyer, but if it's not true and it's against your business, then you should just get rid of that because it's not fair. The second thing is a criticism with some kind of true. For example, there's a mistake in the software, there's a mistake in the product, or you did something wrong. You should always react. You should always comment. You should leave your perspective. You should present the situations from your experience, just not to leave it like this. But also, you shouldn't overreact because everything online, if it doesn't spreading very quickly, and then you should just leave it. Yeah, if it's just a small article, if it's just a small post, it will die anyway after a few days. I know that for some startups, it's a crisis situation because they think, oh, now everybody will read it. It's not like this. It will be forgotten anyway after a few days. I would just leave it. But if you see that the story is snowballing and there are more comments, it's shared online, then you should be engaged from the beginning. You should clarify, you should use arguments, you should be prepared, of course, also for this crisis situation. But I don't expect something like this will happen at the early stage. Uh, well, I haven't seen a story like this, that there was some kind of big crisis among startups developing solutions. Crisis can come at the later stage when the solution is already ready or the solution was fake, and we know some stories. But criticism, you have to take it with honesty. You have to be very concrete on argumenting and just leave it after your explanation because information online has a very short time to leave, and after a few days it will be forgotten, so it doesn't make to burn yourself
Yeah, I
Makes
think.
me happy.
Yeah, it's good to know, and I think when then at some point the further the startup goes, the more prepared they are also for the bad press and how to deal with it, and have more resources than young startups. Because when you said lawyer, I already had like, lawyer.
Yeah, there are a lot of cases. I mean, doctors and the opinions online. Sometimes it's a case for a lawyer. Yeah, if it's not true, you need a lawyer because you have to fight with the values of yourself or of your company.
Yeah. I also have seen exactly such case also in medical branch in Germany that they need to ask lawyer to support them in the conflict in the media. So it's why obviously it's not something rare in startup world. Of course, as you mentioned, not at the early stages. That's for sure.
And that's a good news for
Yeah.
for us and for our early stage startups. And I think we've covered so many interesting topics, very valuable also for everyone. So I wanted to ask you the last question. Like, if you could give only one advice, only one, the most important one, to upcoming founders, to founders who are already on the long in this journey, what that would be, that one, the most important one?
Well, a good question. It would be easier to give 10 advices, but one, um, I would say, go for a challenge like I will write one post on LinkedIn every week, 1 year long. And then you will see after a year if it brings benefit or not, and you can decide if you continue or not, and I can promise that you will continue.
I think I will make this challenge because, like, I am on talking with Mary and the whole time. Mary, we need to concentrate on our LinkedIn. We need to write something.
Yeah, 1 year, once a week, every week, doesn't matter if you're on holiday or not. You can plan in advance also the posts, but be regular. It also loved by LinkedIn algorithms. So be regular in posting, be also regular on commenting other posts, and be regular on not only making relationships with people and stakeholders, journalists, but also caring for these relationships. And from time to time, writing to people who are your key stakeholders. Key stakeholder, I also mean journalists. And just asking, how are you doing? How was your summer? Or just, oh, are you attending this and this conference? I will be there. We can catch up. Not just being very human in this online inhuman medium.
I think that's a great advice. That's a great advice for us and
Yes.
for our listeners. So thank you, Artur, so much for finding the time, joining us, and sharing your insights, which is very valuable for everyone, I'm sure. Because as I said, we also kind of neglected that in the beginning, and we want to deliver to the our listeners and viewers that it is very important to start from the get-go. So yeah, thanks a lot for being here.
Thank you very much. It was such a pleasure.
And that's it with today's episode. Don't forget to follow us, subscribe, give us thumbs up. We are now also on Spotify. We will leave the link down below. So go there, give us stars, and see you in 2 weeks.
Yes, and please, please, please write us comments.